Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Gripe, the show for short, sweet reviews of new release movies, plus the one thing that annoyed me the most. And today I'm going to be talking about Ghostbusters, the new rebooted Ghostbusters starring Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Leslie Jones, and Kate McKinnon. Now, there are going to be spoilers, and I'm going to try to avoid getting into too much of the politics behind this movie because I know this is a very contentious movie, but I'm going to at least address some of it because I think it's important stuff to talk about. But before I begin, let's talk about the movie itself. So like I said, there's going to be spoilers, but here's the plot of the movie basically. So the movie is kind of the similar setup to the original Ghostbusters, where paranormal activity starts to pop up in New York City, and a group of scientists, band together to unearth this. In this case, it's a physicist named Erin, played by Kristen Wiig, who is, trying to get her tenure at Columbia. So she's trying to do everything she can not to, screw up getting tenure. But when she does this, she's approached by a man who has a copy of a book that she is trying to dissociate herself from, that she wrote a long time ago with Melissa McCarthy's character, Abby, basically about ghosts and ghosts being real. And so when she goes to confront Abby with the book, she mentions about the guy who came to her talking about this haunted mansion, and so they decide to go investigate. So it's Abby, Erin, and Kate McKinnon's character, Jillian Holtzman. And so they go to the mansion, they see that there's a ghost, and from that they obviously they see the ghosts are real, and from that it sort of spirals out of control to where Erin gets fired, they lose their position at their university, and then they're basically going to business for themselves to hunt down these ghosts. In the process, Leslie Jones' character, Patty, basically, she's a metro, she works for the metro, and so, when she's down there, this really creepy dude comes and, says some stuff to her and then goes into the subway, and when she follows him, she finds a ghost there. So she goes to find the Ghostbusters, basically, to tell them about this other ghost. And from there, the team is formed. So now we have this team, and they're trying to find the guy who Patty found in the subway, who is setting these devices or in specific places in the city to try to build up paranormal activity. And as they follow the pattern and hunt these ghosts, they start to get some recognition, but also a lot of people saying that they're fake, they're frauds, which obviously they fight against that, as much as they can, because they know that there's something bigger going on, there's some bigger plot, happening. And so when they're told to stay away, that's when they uncover that there actually is a very real connection between these specific sightings where they found these devices. And when they go to confront the man who's been putting them there, a man named Rowan, who's a very sad, bullied individual, he basically dies in the process, but when he dies, he's basically becomes a ghost, and because of all this paranormal activity that he's built up, he can actually produce more ghosts in the city. He can actually bring about pretty much what he calls the fourth cataclysm, which is kind of this apocalyptic event. And of course, they play right into his hands. When he dies, they didn't expect him to die, but it was part of his plan all along, because him becoming a ghost makes him more powerful and all this other stuff. So, while they're being basically while the mayor and everybody's trying to get these people, the Ghostbusters, out of there, they see what's really happening, and of course, Rowan, starts to, restarts the process and opens up a giant portal to let in all the ghosts and everything else. And so the Ghostbusters team up, they fight Rowan, who ultimately, at first he possesses Abby, and then he possesses their dim-witted receptionist, who's played by Chris Hemsworth, Kevin. And then, basically, after he's done with Kevin, he takes on a different form, which they say should be a nice, cute little ghost. And of course, instead of being a nice, cute little ghost, he turns into a gigantic, skyscraper-sized ghost. And, of course, they have to figure out a way to close the portal, and then when they close the portal, they get rid of Rowan, save the city, and they become Ghostbusters for life. So that's basically the plot of the movie. If it sounds familiar, that's because it's pretty much the exact same plot as the first two Ghostbusters movies, which, obviously it's a reboot, so, you kind of expect it to have a similar plot, but to be fair, we just had a reboot of Star Wars that everybody absolutely loved, and yet no one seemed to be, really trashing that movie because it was a reboot. They criticized it because it was basically the same plot as A New Hope, but they didn't trash it. Whereas this movie is getting trashed on left and right, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But, perfectly honest, I've seen this movie twice, and it is funny as hell. It is a really funny movie if you like that kind of Paul Feig humor that he's brought to movies like The Heat and Bridesmaids and Spy. If you enjoyed those kinds of movies and the humor that he brought in those, then you're going to love this movie. Especially if you're a fan of Ghostbusters too, because it's also, a very heartfelt homage to the original Ghostbusters. As much as, people want to say, it's just it's destroying the legacy of the original, let's actually, parse that out a little bit and see, okay, what was the original when it came out? The original, when it came out, was a very cheesy story that was... The stars of that story were SNL alum. Fast forward to this movie, it's a very cheesy story where the stars of the movie are SNL alum. So, honestly, I don't see the difference between the two in terms of, what they were. Ghostbusters has this nostalgia factor to us that we absolutely love this movie. We absolutely love the original Ghostbusters as this, iconic film, but that obviously doesn't mean that it's untouchable or that it's a perfect movie. In a lot of ways, it's extremely flawed. Just like this movie. This movie is extremely flawed, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't deliver what it promises, which is a silly, fun movie about people chasing ghosts. And to be honest, it actually has a better story than the original in terms of, fleshing it out. It's not this just kind of oh, there's a, monster in my fridge. We believe you, but no one else does because there's nothing else happening, and then suddenly everything just happens. There's no real catalyst for what brings about the apocalypse in the first movie, whereas in this one, there actually is a catalyst. There's something that's happening, something explainable, so there is a more coherent plot in terms of an actual series of events. Now, that doesn't mean it's intelligent or it makes total sense, but at least there is something there. But it is silly, and of course, like any movie of this kind of like this, it's very much an Ivan Reitman kind of film where it has a lot of craziness happening, and then there's the ghosts, there's the fighting the ghosts until it ultimately leads up to the big bad, which you get at the end. In this movie, the case, the big bad is very similar to the Marshmallow Man, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the first movie. In fact, he does make an appearance in this movie as a demonic balloon, as a a parade balloon, which is really it's a very funny scene when that one shows up. And that's what this movie does. It pulls a lot of the stuff from the original, not as a way of saying hey, let's redo this. It's more just throwing little Easter eggs here and there that remind you of why you love the original, but also why these people who are making this movie love the original as well. That's the one thing that I get out of this movie, and you really see it, is that the people who are making this movie really enjoyed it. The actors just had so much fun in this movie. The jokes very much. I mean, the jokes are a lot of what you'd expect from your Kate McKinnons and Kristen Wiggs of the world. I mean, it's that kind of humor, but they deliver it so well, and they deliver it with that in the context of Ghostbusters, it just seems to fit. Because let's face it, there was a lot of hesitation about this movie. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw the previews for this movie, I was worried. With all the speculation, I mean, Sony, the last few years have not been kind to Sony, and for good reason, but when Sony, brought this movie out and they released the first trailer, it was supposed to be this yeah, Ghostbusters is back, but instead the reaction they got was a ridiculous amount of hatred, and a lot of that hatred could be attributed to sexism, and without getting into the politics of it, just the basic fact that they took the original kind of archetype of Ghostbusters, and instead of it being the 4 original male leads, they had 4 women. So it's might be a stretch, but at the same time, there might be some merit to it when a lot of the comments are like, they're ruining my childhood by putting women in the roles of these, iconic characters. Which, to be fair, they're not the same characters. They're not meant to be the exact same characters we had before. You had, Venkman, and you had Ray, you had Egon, you had Ernie Hudson's character. Why can't I think of his name? But basically, you had the original characters, and here they're different characters in their own ways. Holtzman, I absolutely loved Kate McKinnon's performance in this as Holtzman. She is just unhinged. It's adorable, terrifying, and funny all at the same time. Leslie Jones's character is very over the top, but at the same time is kind of, in a lot of ways, very real. There's a few moments that are, a little bit of a stretch, but she's also real in terms of somebody. It's like, if this person saw a ghost, this is kind of how you would imagine they would react if, in a comedic sort of atmosphere, which is exactly what Leslie Jones gives you. And then Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig, the two obviously have been in movies together before, their role together in Bridesmaids, and here they just, it's that same kind of chemistry that they have. It's an entertaining movie, and that's what I wanted. When I walked out of this movie, both times I was smiling because there are so many good jokes in this movie, and there are so many moments that just slay, and none of these were in the trailers. So the trailers really, in a way, the trailers did a good job of not let me kind of put it this way. A lot of people complain about trailers giving away too much. Like, they'll watch a trailer, and then they'll see the movie and they'll say all the best parts were in the trailer, or all the good jokes were in the trailer. So the trailer did not have a lot of good jokes. It had some very okay jokes, and a lot of those are in the movie. And when they happen in the movie, some of them actually are funny based on the context. Others, they still just are kind of, that's kind of funny. It's, mildly humorous. But at the same time, a trailer is also supposed to garner excitement for the movie. Now, I could imagine that a lot of the antipathy towards the movie was because of people who wanted this movie to fail from the beginning. People who had so much hatred for this movie without even seeing it. Like, a year before they even saw the movie, they hated this movie. Which, you're not going to change their minds. So, don't try to change their minds. But, obviously, the reviews on this movie were decent. 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, that's decent. 60% Metacritic, also decent. So that tells you, for what it is a good, entertaining movie. And that's exactly what I wanted it to be. I didn't want this to be, Winter Soldier version of Ghostbusters that just, blows your mind at how it manages to, create an entirely new genre. Really ask yourself, what can you do with Ghostbusters besides what they have done with Ghostbusters? People completely rag on Ghostbusters 2, which I actually enjoy. It's not as good as the first one, but it's an enjoyable movie on its own. But people rip on that movie because it's derivative of the first one. It's basically the same plot as the first one, but what else can you do? You're talking about people who chase ghosts. There's not a lot you can do unless you start to get into darker themes or, move into some things that might not necessarily feel the same as what you'd get with the Ghostbusters. The Ghostbusters movies are supposed to be funny, a little bit creepy, but not like over-the-top horror. It's not supposed to be like gore. It's supposed to be silly creepy, but because you don't want people running out of the theater screaming. You want them laughing. That's the point of Ghostbusters at the core. It's a comedy. And this movie delivers, very much so. The whole cast, the four leading ladies obviously nail it. Chris Hemsworth does a great job as the, in this case, kind of the dumb blonde, plays the receptionist, who is clearly not very smart, has a couple of extremely funny lines, like, hey, an aquarium is just a submarine for fish. Just some great moments in this movie. You got Michael Kenneth Williams, Matt Walsh, Andy Garcia. The guy who played Rowan was a really creepy dude. Neil Casey, I haven't really seen him in much else, but he's a really creepy dude. Charles Dance is in there, briefly. Ed Begley Jr., Zach Woods. So a number of, people in this movie did a really good job. Not to mention, the original cast members are here. All 4 of them. Now, granted, Harold Ramis has passed away, but his presence is in the movie in a very brief Easter egg. You got Bill Murray playing somebody who doesn't believe in ghosts, which is very much kind of like a foil to to Venkman from the original Ghostbusters. Dan Aykroyd plays a cabbie, and he just has that kind of like Dan Aykroyd swagger to him. And then Ernie Hudson plays Leslie Jones's uncle, this funeral director who gives him the hearse. So I mean, the people show up from the old movie just as kind of it's like they want to at least be a part of it, remind people, that this, what Ghostbusters was. But let's face it, they're in their 60s and 70s at this point. That Ghostbusters movie is going to look a lot more like Crystal Skull than we think it would look. So, I mean, it's not a... I mean, if they had made Ghostbusters 3 in the 90s, it could have been an amazing movie, or it could have been an absolute flop, and that might have destroyed the Ghostbusters franchise for good. I mean, the fact that we haven't gotten another Ghostbusters movie since 1989 tells you that Ghostbusters 2 just did not land very well. And, I mean, if anything ruined the first movie, it should have been the second movie. Not this one that's made 30 years later when, yes, we love the original, but that doesn't mean that we want to leave the concept behind. How long do we have to wait before, people can take that concept and try to do something new with it? And I'm glad that they did something new. Does it work all the time? No. In fact, I have a very legitimate key gripe with this movie. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't connect where it's supposed to connect. It's supposed to be a witty, funny romp with some, impressive effects, and for the most part, the effects are really good. There's a number of ghosts, effects that they have that are absolutely amazing. Whereas other effects are not so good. I'm making all sorts of a mess. But, again, the writing... The jokes are funny. The story is, kind of meh. Not everybody does a great job. I mean, Andy Garcia, he's an interesting actor, and in this case, I wasn't sure that he did the greatest job as the mayor. He almost is a little bit like manic in some sense. But the core of what this movie was a success in my mind. The humor that they brought was fantastic. There were some great visual effects. The fight scene at the end when they're, fighting their way to get to Rowan and they fight through all these ghosts was actually really fun, really well done. There's a part where Holtzman has basically 2 kind of like whip type things, and it's just awesome looking. Slimer makes an appearance in this movie, and Slimer basically steals the Ghostbuster mobile and goes for a joyride through the city. I mean, there's just a lot of very fun, stupid, silly stuff in this movie, and that's exactly what it should have been. Like, I'm glad that they took this risk and made something that was different enough from the original to stand on its own and be entertaining. Now, granted, the flaws are big in terms of size, in terms of the ending. I have a problem with movies that think big, cheesy effects are the way to go. And this was my same problem with Independence Day Resurgence, is they decided, hey, we defeated the enemy. Nope, wait, now it's a gigantic alien chasing us like Godzilla. In this case, Rowan takes the form of the cute little Ghostbusters logo ghost, but then morphs into this gigantic, 200-foot tall, monster ghost thing. And the effects there, for brief moments, look decent, but when Rowan is just kind of off doing his own thing, it's very bad. It's really bad looking, and I don't necessarily like it when the big bad is meant to be, the only way to make the big bad menacing is by making them literally gigantic and silly like this. It was funny in the first Ghostbusters movie because it was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It was just kind of this cute joke, but, it was still extremely cheesy. No matter how you split that, if they had tried to do that today, it would be the exact same result. It would be super cheesy, visual effect type of thing. In this case, they tried to make it this, it basically looks like, Casper the Friendly Ghost, with a pointed hood type of thing. Not to make an association with the Klan, but because that would be a bad thing. Although he is the villain, so why not? And it doesn't land very well, especially in the fact that like when you do giant monster type things in a city, you have to account for things like, okay, where are the people in this case? There's a group of police and soldiers and all that stuff standing outside the hotel when Rowan is doing his thing, and when Rowan grows and breaks out of the hotel, you would think that he would step on these people who are just sitting there in the middle of the street, but he doesn't. And it's just kind of like the continuity aspect of that, just the logistics of something like that are always so silly. When you have something gigantic in a city and just destroying things and running around, and the logistics of it, it's just like, oh, come on. Not to mention the visual effects are a little bit silly in this case. And when they do finally defeat him, Rowan manages to catch Abby as he's going in, and then Aaron grabs a rope basically and jumps into the portal after her, and has this Big Hero 6 moment, which I wasn't too big of a fan of that one either. Now, granted, when you kind of parse out what the point of this movie was, one of the things you could say is this, like, this sisterhood that these two women had lost over, when they were younger. Obviously, Erin didn't want to be this ghost hunter. She wanted to be something more. She wanted to get tenure and do all this stuff. Abby wanted to pursue that dream forever, and now they kind of like have grabbed it together and, are going to move forward together. I guess that's the point, maybe. I don't know. Either way, at the end of the day, I was just laughing a lot. There are so many jokes that I just would love to just spout out because they are so funny. And, yeah, that's what I wanted to get out of this movie. I wanted to laugh, and I laughed hard. So I was surprised. Obviously, I was excited to see it, but I was surprised by the end result, which, could have been so much worse. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to continue saying it's a terrible movie for any number of reasons. But when you get down to the basic core of what this movie is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a dumb comedy. Not like, brain dead comedy. It's supposed to be silly, witty comedy, which is exactly what it is. And the 4 female leads are perfect for this role. I think every single one of them did exactly what they wanted to do. And you're going to hear people saying they did the best they could with the material they have, and, while there's probably some truth in that, I'm also just going to say they nailed it. They didn't just do the best they could, they nailed it in terms of giving us funny moments and stuff that is memorable, stuff that, I know I'd love to see it again. It's just that it brought that much mirth to me to watch this movie and be that entertaining. Objectively, I give it a 7 out of 10, which, might not sound great, but for a movie like this, where, it has no discernible plot, it doesn't have a great plot, has some very cheesy effects, and overall is a very cheesy type movie, but has a lot of great humor, especially by the main actresses. So 7 is a recommendation. I would say go see this movie. Give it a chance. Don't go into it thinking that, your childhood is ruined, because if a movie can ruin your childhood, you might need to cling to some other things in life. Just saying. So, but you can tell me whether or not you agree or not by just going into the comments and saying, yeah, I agree, or no, I disagree, or you're a bitch and a liar. I'm not gonna, your words, not mine. But let me know in the comments what you thought, if you liked it, if you hated it. If you hated it, I can't wait to talk to you. Yeah, so just let me know. That is my review of Ghostbusters for 2016, and I will see you next time on Key Gripe. Thanks for watching. Bye.